Hello again, book lovers. The Secret History of Gold by Dominic Frisby. Now, Mr. Frisby is somebody who came to my attention via comedy, as he is also a stand-up comedian. Not one I was particularly impressed with at first, but I have found stuff that I like since then. However, the other angle to Mr. Frisby is he studies finance. And he obviously studies gold. And he's written a book about it to tell us how good it is. Now, there are two parts to this book. One is a historical run-through and the other is an argument in favour of certain types of currency. So you could divorce the two if you like. You could read it, enjoy it and not agree with it. Or, like I did, read it, enjoy it and almost wholly agree with it. So, what's in it? Well, we start in the introduction by learning that there are more than 400 mentions of gold in the Bible. To give us an idea of its antiquity, it's actually older than Earth. And we also get a layout of the two possible economic theories. One based on the gold standard and one not. And then we get into chapter 1, in which we find cosmology, religion, chemistry, the Anunnaki. And here I will repeat Mr. Frisby's parenthetical remark. It would be remiss of me not to mention that this version of events is disputed, close brackets. Also numerology, Egyptology, philosophy, all laced with quirky facts. My kind of book. Here's a quirky fact, which Wikipedia says isn't a fact, it's a possibility. We learn the origin of the golden fleece that Jason went after in Colchis. An amazing story, and one which I think must be the basis for the legend. Whatever Wikipedia says. We also get the possible historical basis for the King Midas myth. And by page 22, our author is referencing Matt Ridley, as he previously did with Herodotus, which leads me to think he has a very similar reading list to mine. We then get a rather interesting run through the various systems for measuring wealth, whether they be as small as a grain, which was used as a measure for gold in the past, or a barley corn, which was used for shoe size, or larger things such as cubits, yards and furlongs. As I said, we get a lot of quirky facts in here. I could tell you the name of the coin that Judas was paid in, if you like, or you could read the book, which also offers us a final conclusive reason for the fall of the Roman Empire amidst all the competing theories. Mr. Frisby says the mines ran out. Well, that would do it. Anyway, past the Romans we get quite a detailed list of medieval coinage. Page 74, right at the end of the intro to central banking and the gold standard. Catastrophe strikes. The bank could lend the full amount of its deposits to the government. It could also issue notes against that same capital which depositors could spend. The alchemist's dream of creating money out of nothing had been realised, ironically at a time when counterfeiting was rife. The intrinsic value of the paper might have been close to nil. Its token value, however, was much more. In many ways, it was the birth of both fractional reserve and central banking, says the penultimate sentence. The last sentence says, if only we could turn back time. Do you agree with Mr. Frisby? Well, there's a lot to get into. We have to run through Great Britain's accidental gold standard, the numerous recoinages, the effects that they had. Suddenly we're back to alchemy again as Newton takes over the Royal Mint in pursuit of the fraudsters. Then there's the tale of the gold rush in America, Canada and also Australia. And speaking of Oz, we get a lovely takedown of the imagery and reasons for writing The Wizard of Oz, which I wasn't aware of. And at the end of the section called How the US Made the World Dependent on the Dollar, and these things really should be generally known, they should be taught in schools, we read, ever since, without the discipline of gold, Western governments have bloated to unprecedented size, fat on waste, war and welfare, intervening in areas of our lives never before thought possible. The consequences of the new debt-based fiat system have taken manifold forms from rampant inequality to successive financial crises. Fix money, fix the world, Mr. Nixon said, and Mr. Frisby says we're doing the opposite. So the anti-fiat currency argument is being laid bare here, and as we reach the end of the book, in the section "What's the point of gold?" we embark upon some very interesting statistics. But just before that, here on page 189, we read a sentiment which I've even heard echoed by Marxist economists. And it's this: the easiest way for ordinary people to protect themselves against and even benefit from the explosion in money supply since 1971 has been via real estate. That's why houses have become savings vehicles instead of just houses. But now we have an entire generation that cannot afford anywhere to live and will put off starting a family as a result, with all sorts of long-term consequences to Western civilization. Indeed, a few pages later on, under the graphs, the conclusion is that house price to earnings ratios can affect even such things as shrinking family size, the rise of nihilism, feelings of hopelessness, as many feel they will never be able to afford a home. Well, that's very true, certainly in England as well as in America. Now this is under the graphs. The graphs take up a lot of the text in this section of the book, but they're worth looking at. Now, statistics, you can fudge them, you can mangle them, so I'd have to dig into these, but prima facie, I think the most staggering of the graphs are the ones that show average US house prices measured in dollars, and underneath it we get how many ounces of gold you would need to buy the average US house between 1964 and 2024. Absolutely jaw-dropping! Do these graphs prove Mr. Frisby's point? Is he right? Have we gone mad? Do the people in charge of our lives know what they're doing? Did Harold Wilson know what he was doing? Did Gordon Brown know what he was doing? George Soros knew what he was doing. But do we? Well, as an economic almost ignoramus, I found this book very useful. I'm going to mull over the arguments, and at the end our author makes the case for investing in gold and Bitcoin or similar electronic currencies. Have the arguments in this book persuaded me to invest in gold? Well, I'm afraid that's financially sensitive information. However, I am recommending this book. It's hot off the press. I got the hardback edition. I don't know if it's out in paperback yet, but as I said, worth reading. 250 pages of facts and arguments worth chewing over. Probably no second-hand versions available so early, so if you want it, you're going to have to contribute to Mr. Frisby's wealth fund so that he can invest in more gold and Bitcoin.